Hello and welcome to the Free Outside Show. I am in my parents' house recording a couple episodes because I've had to travel a ton to do the whole funeral celebration of life thing. Not ideal. Been kind of a rough month. But we're still going to do podcasts because you guys have been great. You enjoy them. But you can do one thing for me. That would be to give it a 5-star rating. You can even write a really nice review. In fact, let's read a couple reviews. We've gotten some really nice ones. I never expected people to be so nice. In fact, I have a episode in the hopper about actually how mean people can be. So it's been quite a treat when people are nice. So let's start out with this. Excellent interviewer from Ken Seals. Jeff's approach to interviewing is so genuine, and the questions he asks are spot on, exactly what I'm interested in learning. So I think why it's like that is because I spent 50 episodes, a whole 50 episodes over 6 months, doing 2 episodes a week, maybe 30 to 40% solo and the others with a guest, talking to friends and people I knew. After that, I went bigger and talked to people I didn't know and interviewed them. I wanted to practice. I test very highly on the autistic scale, and so this podcast was a way for me to do something that made me nervous, get out of my shell, and talk to some people that do great things, and also try to pass along some of my knowledge and some of their knowledge. So that's why I did it. It was a very measured approach, very measured growth of the podcast. Didn't take on any sponsors, and we just had RecPack for a couple episodes. You can still use the code FREEOUTSIDE25 to get 25% off at recpack.co. I'm giving them way more than I probably need to here, but it does support this show. But yeah, it was a very measured approach on growth. I didn't know how to do this. I thought about starting a podcast for a long time. It made me nervous, so I did a soft launch the day Cocodona started because I knew I wouldn't see any responses or anything for a long time. So that's how I learned to be a okay interviewer. I feel like I am very self-critical, but people are so nice. I love the comments that you like the episode and stuff. It makes me actually feel feelings, which is very hard for me. This episode, though, what we're going to do is we talked to some amazing people, like 4 of the hottest people right now that you should probably want to take some stuff away from. So I thought this episode would be really easy to do. It took forever. So I went through a few of the recent interviews, I think maybe the last 5 or so, with pros or record-setting people. All of them have set records, actually. So I went through them and I pulled out some nuggets and things that we can all learn and take from. And so that's what this episode's about. Before we get into that, let's go with Hiker Dude said, "Great pod. He asks insightful questions of his guests, Wow, I can't read. Hiker Dude says, "Great pod. He asks insightful questions of his guests, and both his monologues and interviews just seem like a chat with a friend. Just listened to David Roche interview, and I found it the most unique of all the interviews I've heard with Roche. Read Jeff's book and have been following him for years. Glad he's out there doing his thing. So thank you. It's really scary to do your thing. I've gotten so much hate from so many people by putting myself out there because I'm a little weird and I'm just this way. I have a lot of knowledge, but brands and people, fellow podcasters in the space, fellow people in the trail running world think I'm an F-word idiot. So I wanted to just put myself out there as my authentic self by doing this podcast to kind of show what it's about. And this episode, I think, is going to help you guys take some knowledge that we've extracted from the guests recently. So let's get into it with a word from David Roche.
It's just so fun to talk to you because, oh my God, you are such a warm and kind soul. It's like I feel as if you reached into my heart and just made it grow 3 sizes. So thank you.
And I think the biggest thing that we can take from some of these guests is the diet and fueling. High carb has increased so much, and I'm not here to just tell you what other people said. So let's dive into the diets of some of the people out there. I think it's really interesting, and 300 calories an hour seems to be a number to go for. And with athletes I coach, I think I'm going to take on a couple more. So if you're interested in coaching, reach out to me, jeff@freeoutside.com. You can also send really nice emails too. That really makes my day. But what I always say is I think somewhere between 100 and 200 miles is this shift where we need to focus more on calories versus actual carbs. Like the combination of whatever's in it is going to matter a little less when you're pushing your body at a 200-mile pace than a 100-mile pace. So you'll hear David Roche. I don't know if I have that clip in here. We'll see. But Terry Dower and Nick Fowler both talk about 300 calories an hour, and David Roche is kind of on the 150 grams of carbs an hour. So just want to put that out there that they're essentially the same thing. I think it should be called high fueling or high calorie fueling, or more emphasis on fueling rather than high carb, because I think it's misleading for the breadth of sport or FKTs that people are doing. But just want to throw that out there that it's a revolution in the sport. Jump on board. As another pro I've talked to spoke about is I think this approach of a more wholesome attack to it rather than just high carb fueling during the things you're doing is going to be what saves people's guts. People who just try to fuel only high carb on the run, but don't have this more holistic diet approach are going to ruin their guts. I don't know. I'm not a dietitian, which is a funny line this year if you know the inside joke. But I would say that looking at your diet holistically, what you're eating going into a run, what you're eating coming out of the run, and hitting markers, I really should get a blood test. Someone connect me with a blood testing company, because I want to talk about this a little bit more, but I don't have a ton of knowledge on blood panels and stuff. I did do one this year. It was more through a doctor for I've had some health issues, but we're coming back strong this coming year. But yeah, I think that this holistic approach of how diet flows into running rather than your diet while running is where we're headed with this. So let's hear what the pros are eating.
What was the diet out on the AT this year?
Gave Rascal and my mom, who are the two like consistent crew members throughout the FKT, I gave them some like guidelines, what I wanted to look for, and it was 500 calories for breakfast. It was 300 calories an hour as I was hiking, and then every time I saw my crew about 6 to 7 times a day, I drank a 320 calorie protein drink, and then at night I did 1,500 calories and another protein drink. And if I was at the van, I'd do an ice cream sandwich.
Basically, I was like, okay, I need at least 300 calories an hour for the next 4 days. So I was like, okay, so 20 items a day.
So I saw my times. That was one thing of it. And the other thing was I was not eating enough. I was like eating half a banana and almost nothing. But also because I didn't have the time to eat. If you have only 2 or 3 minutes left, you cannot eat a lot.
All right. I mean, fueling is I think it's pretty set in stone. All the best performances are coming from people who are fueling properly. Another thing I want to hit on and move into is this idea of a schedule. I think we've kind of turned upside down this scheduling concept where, yes, sleep strategy is important, but also how do you structure a day? Everyone has this efficiency thing where I think it's been left on the table for so long. So like Scott Jurek, when he did the Appalachian Trail FKT, there were stories. I wasn't out there, but I do have friends who are out there. But he would take so long to get ready and to wind down at the end of the day. He'd be like signing autographs or giving gear away that I think that really hurt the time he threw down on the Appalachian Trail. We're trying to get him on. I'm sure we will. We can get anyone on here. And I've reached out to even Camille Herron when we talked about her Wikipedia saga. But I would love to ask him about that because I think the efficiency side is where things are going. And let's just hear from people on their daily structure, how they do such big miles, and that benefit of efficiency.
What's the structure of a 70-mile day? Like, when are you getting up? How are you breaking up the day? Are you running down hills?
Run the down hills and run the flats.
Nice.
And no breaks.
No breaks. And then when are you getting up in the morning?
Usually 3 a.m.
And everything you're going to eat is in like the front of your pack or accessible for the whole day?
100%, yeah.
And then do you pack that the morning of or the night before?
In between. Tonight's pillow is tomorrow's food.
Totally. Okay, cool.
So just wake up in the morning and grab your pillow and start moving.
What was the normal schedule out there?
I also did half camping and half van camping. And I think that was crucial to the success of the FKT. Me and Rascal, we wake up at 3 a.m. and she would be the first one up. I would kind of be groggy and waking up, and she would get breakfast ready and come over and like start hand feeding me, like spoon feeding me this food, because I was preparing my feet, putting Leuko tape on, putting the socks on. As you know, like putting on the shoes and everything in the morning during an FKT is like incredibly difficult and like the worst part of the day, for me at least. I had like literal holes and sores all over my feet. And 30 minutes later, I would be out on the trail. So I would do like leg swings here and there to just warm up my hips. And then I'd start around 3:30 a.m. and I'd hike for about 17 and a half hours a day on average, meet my crew about 6 to 7 times a day. And then I would end anywhere from like 8:30 to 10:30, depending on the terrain and how many miles I had that day and where camp was. And it would either be at the van or camping. So Rascal and JP, who's an ultra teammate of mine, they would backpack gear up to specific locations, because with this FKT, I think, historically this FKT's been done in a way that's like get to van crossing or get to road crossings and stay in the road, or stay at the roads, but stay in the van. With how stout it is, I wanted to kind of follow more of a Carl Sabe FKT strategy and like utilizing camping and staying as close to the average amount of miles as possible. So that was like, for me, 54. I think it averaged out, I did 54 a day. And so we utilize half camping and half van stays. So half the time I was in the van, half the time I was in a tent. And I was so thankful that JP and Rascal were willing to bring gear up, and we'd all camp there together. They would clean my feet. Rascal would spoon feed me, and then I was in bed or in the van within an hour of getting to the crew at night. And that was pretty much it for 40 days.
All right, the next big thing is, as we're talking and I'm pulling out these clips, it took forever to grab, by the way. So, I mean, you're welcome. But the other big thing is how people are learning from each other. So I really like that David Roche is really open. Tara Dower is really open. I'm trying to ask the questions. We get the answers that apply to life and make everyone in the sport better, or make you better, no matter if you're first or last or chasing cutoffs. Like, that improvement, I think, is the love of the process that we all really enjoy. And that's what I go for. That's what I like. I don't even like the conclusion or the accomplishment as much as I like the process of just getting better at some of these things. So let's dive into standing on the shoulder of giants, kind of what people are saying, how you learn, how you level up without having to put yourself through all the experiments yourself, because there's so much science out there. If you follow it, you can accomplish great things.
Coach, multiple winners of Leadville, including Claire Gallagher. So for us, it's just, it could just not be a beginner, I could jump right to the end of the line applying what they've taught us. And what's so cool about Ultra is we do not understand it. Like, I think my experiences at these two races, and especially at Leadville, breaking the quote unbreakable record, shows, hey, maybe there is actually a lot of area under this curve that is left to explore. And what's so cool about that to me is not, oh, someone's going to come beat my time. That's awesome. And I want that to happen. But more, what are we all capable of? Like, what is the person chasing cutoffs capable of, or that could never dream of doing ultra? Like, I think the limits are still so far beyond where our comprehension currently lies.
And so let's go into the next big thing, which I think is this mindset. So you can do all the science, you can prepare your body, you can be efficient, you can have a great schedule, you can have a great crew, but your mind's got to be there. That's why Nick Fowler is so good. You got to have belief that you can do what you're setting out to. And there's a bunch of mindset exercises. One I like to do is kind of double-edged sword, or a single-sided sword with two segments of it. But to have goals, like, what are process goals? These are not like my goal is to break the FKT. It's like, what am I going to do every day that leads to success? So if you break something up like that, you're more likely to actually have success. This is a skill I walk my athletes through going into events. And the other is to just think about when it's going to be hard, how you're going to deal with it. So if you already imagine a scenario where you're going to face adversity. So I did some consulting for a couple of guys going for the calendar year Triple Crown this year. And what I said was, imagine all the things that can go wrong, write them all down, and then start walking through them and think about how it's going to feel. You snap a trekking pole, you got 20 miles of post holing to go through. You run out of food and you still got 24 hours to the next place. Are all these going to happen? Very likely no, but at least you've thought through how you're going to feel and some possible solutions. So it's not a foreign thing that's going to just literally ruin your trip. If you think it through like that, where everything that's going to happen is something you can deal with and have thought could happen, then you're so much more likely to be successful. So let's hear about some mindset.
How do you know it's possible? Like at a certain point, it just becomes vibes, right? Like we want to uplift shooting your shot in the world, and going for it. And, I know where my fitness is overall. Like I know where my speed is and the type of mountain runner I am. And at the same time, ultras are not run on paper. And realistically, this Matt Carpenter course record that had stood for so long and had been called all these like illustrious things, if it was achievable, people would have achieved it already. And so part of my brain, the imposter syndrome part, was like, you don't have a shot. But then the coaching part of my brain was like, well, if you let that imposter syndrome part of your brain be the one that sets the narrative publicly too, you're just being ego driven in a different way. You're saying that your imposter syndrome is worth more than your data.
It's 100% belief. If I didn't believe it was possible, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the secret recipe right there. As soon as you believe so much in yourself and that it's possible, that's when you can just go do it if you have a strong enough mind.
And right along with belief in yourself, I think is this belief in yourself as like a total person. And where this comes into play a lot, I think is this high mileage thing that used to be what you had to be like a pro or really good or accomplish these things. But now I think there's this enjoyment level. Like you can get a zone 2 aerobic effort. You can get training in for your through hike, for your FKT, for your 100 miler, for your 200 miler with cross training. Do you love swimming? Do you love biking? Do you love jump rope? Like, do you love the elliptical? Who would love that? Stationary bike? I don't know. But, or like high rocks is getting really popular, or an aerobic class or something. All these fit more into fitness than I think we've ever realized. And so I want to just dive in right to the expert himself, who talks about the benefit of cross training, because I think we've lost touch with it and we don't need to do as much mileage as we think we do. So let's dive into volume and cross training.
And I've loved recently introducing that second day off running that's cross training, because so many athletes have varied hobbies and it's a chance to go do that fun aerobic activity that running often takes away from them a lot of the time.
Well, and I think, we should just uplift cross training way more. I ran 5 days a week every week of this build or less. I think it's easy just because it diminishes weekly volume to think it's less productive. But if what we're trying to improve at the end of the day is output around aerobic threshold in ultras, the best way to practice that is not via running, particularly for advanced athletes, because, for an advanced athlete, for me, that is a ton of stress on my body if I did it via running, and almost no stress on my body if I did it via cross training. Like a 2.5 hour run at the top end of Z2 for me, and I'm wrecked for a few days, that's me I'm going out and running, in the mid fives or whatever. And I'd be just done. Whereas biking, like it barely feels like anything. And then you could run that afternoon. And I think with age that matters a little more perhaps, but even before that, I think, we've seen this, like the place where I've learned the most on this is from some of the track athletes we coached, like Ali Ostrander and Anna Gibson. We're both wonderful. Like Anna is an incredible cyclist, and she might even compete, I think, in cycling next year a little bit just for fun because she's that good. Her watts are world class. Ali does a ton of arc trainer and other cross training modalities. And they kind of taught me, it's like, well, if they're succeeding at the ultimate running economy test on the track and in trails at that elite level, and they can do this, then I need to stop being such a precious little bitch about my weekly mileage and start applying the theories from them. Essentially, some of the theories that have been mostly piloted in female athletes, and apply that to me. And I think what we're seeing is maybe people should be doing that a little bit more in general. And that way too, the sport isn't just selecting for adaptation freaks who can do really, really high volume without getting injured while still adapting, which isn't that big of a pool of people. I think often it ends up leaving the top end of the sport, especially selected for genetic outliers for that specific variable of like, how does this person adapt and recover, rather than like, what is this person actually capable of?
For forever, I am going for endurance. Like that's my goal. Always doing pretty high mileage. What my body likes, it's about 100K a week, something like that. During the years, I built that up a bit. So in the beginning of my ultra career, I did like 80 kilometers. That's 50 miles. And now this year, I think it's about 120, 130 kilometers a week by average.
Okay.
And most of it is, of course, endurance. I like to run in the woods, but I'm not ashamed to run also when I'm going to work on asphalt, on the normal roads, because it's good to have different kind of surfaces in your training, so that when you have a backyard that's only concrete, then you're not fucked.
Okay, we've talked about schedule, but how do you space out your schedule over a week? I really like to think of Monday as a rest day, just with how most people have Saturday, Sunday for longer runs and efforts, but everyone's different. So this is just a really general example from David Roche, but I like to structure things in the same way. I really have gone to, actually 2 years ago, I started this schedule for myself, which 2 years ago is like the last time I coached myself. I'm coaching myself again for the last couple months. But what I did was I tried this thing where I only ran 4 days a week, but I ran doubles a couple days, and I also did like 15 to 20 miles. So I'd do like 80 to 90 miles a week, but they were all in 4 days. But I also got 3 rest days a week, and I felt really good. It was interesting to combine like mid or decent volume, but with also a number of rest days. So I really like the cross training aspect, but let's just hear how something's structured, because I think the big thing is periodized training, which is like where you're working on speed, then you're working on like threshold, then you're working on long distance or volume. I think that's changing or incorporating more speed throughout the year, because you don't want to lose touch with that speed. And that's why there a lot of athletes do like an activation speed session within a couple weeks of their big race. Wow, look at me, I sound smart. None of you thought I was smart, right? Okay, let's dive into what a typical schedule is. And I would say 90% of this is sort of how I believe in train athletes too. I think all coaches are different, all athletes are different, but let's just hear the swap David Roche style. And they train a couple hundred athletes, I think. They train a lot of people.
So the general way in a perfect world, like everybody's different, everybody trains differently, and we don't really have a system that we fit people into. It's more of like general framework theories. Is Monday would be a rest day, where it's like okay to do nothing. Though one of the big ways our training theory has changed is heat is a part of training, and so on rest days we really encourage athletes to get passive heat exposure for their blood volume. Then Tuesday would be easy in strides, hill or flat, but usually hill strides. Wednesday would be some sort of speed workout, often in build cycles. So like the things like the 16x11 I mentioned, plus some sort of moderate running after, just like a couple miles for lactate shuttling. Later in cycles, it might be something that's like a harder threshold type workout, even super compensation style workouts, but basically just some midweek workout. Thursday would be cross training, where an athlete can ideally go a little bit longer, high quality Z2 type work. Basic cross training has become a big part of what we'd like to do across the board. Friday would be an easy run, which for advanced athletes can be, a little bit longer if they can recover. Saturday, long run, often with some sort of quality threshold type thing. Sunday, easy run in strides.
All right, let's start moving into the bigger picture. So you want to be a trail runner, or you want to do things that you don't know if you can do, or you want to make money in the sport. You got to have this belief, but you also got to be able to offer something to the greater world or community. Do you have followers? Do you not have followers? What can you offer a brand? Do you want to be sponsored? You have to have that undying belief, unwavering belief in yourself, and market yourself as an athlete, because no one's going to advocate for you if you don't advocate for you. So I put in some clips from Dean Karnazes, because he's the greatest marketer that's ever run an ultra marathon, I think. I don't think Donald Trump's run an ultra marathon. Maybe.
But I would say that, if you're going to be a trail runner,
unless you're of the caliber of a Walmsley or Portney or someone on that level, and even they, you have to promote yourself. There's a lot of self-promotion involved, and you have to feel comfortable with that. You have to be comfortable promoting yourself, but doing it in an authentic sort of way. So, affiliating with sponsors where you actually use their products, you like their products, and you feel good endorsing their products. So try to be as authentic as you can, and and try your best, obviously, to be as competitive as you can. Remain humble, remain visible, and talk to others, listen more than you talk, and have a go at it. You don't want to be 50 and say, God, I wish I would have pursued my running career a little bit further when I was a young man. That's my best advice.
All right, let's start wrapping things up with some, I would call them quick hitter, but I think they're going to be longer segments. So running economy is the buzzword, but I hadn't heard a lot of people just straight up ask. So I wanted to just get a good answer, and I'm throwing that back in here because I think it's the key to anything. And if you're coaching yourself, take this, apply it to yourself, and now you know what it means. You don't have to follow any of this stuff in this episode, but at least knowledge is power. So you're getting the power, and you can do anything with that power that you want to.
What is running economy, and how do you improve it?
Perfect question. Well, so on the multi-day people, in the through hike people listening, all these principles still apply. Like, I think one of the places where we've had the most success is with multi-day athletes like John Kelly and Damian Hall and Andrew Skirka back when he would do these long expeditions and stuff. And so I think that, like, no matter where you're coming from, it's the same type of principles. And it gets back to this idea of running economy. So what running economy means is the amount of energy it takes for a given output or a pace, essentially. And there can be a lot of different exact definitions within that framework. So the given energy at VO2 max, so velocity of VO2, or velocity at lactate threshold, like 1 hour effort, or velocity at aerobic threshold. So here we're talking, a number of hours effort. And that item in particular, velocity at aerobic threshold, velocity at the top end of your zone 2 out of 5-zone model, is basically what determines all ultra performance, and everything else around that can be trained pretty quickly. Those running economy metrics take a lot longer to train, but once you do train them, they're pretty sticky. And so the reason I've been able to do what I've been able to do in hundreds is, like, I just run by heart rate essentially, and my running economy is so good that I'm able to just go faster than other people while still going easy enough to replace all the calories I burn. And so if you're going much farther than that, like, through hikes and things like that, you are still at some percentage of that same metric. And so raising the ceiling raises the floor is the overarching way to think about it in ultras. And then it's a direct application to performance at shorter races like marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, whatever. And the way to improve it is usually, it's an all-encompassing variable that at its core is mainly aerobic development. So aerobic development through all means is good, which means just like going out there and doing something. But layered on top of that, the thing people miss is that so much of it is mechanically operated. So how much muscular output you have, not just at those effort levels, but just overall. And so building your power and that output year round is maybe the fundamental tenet of how we approach training, particularly with age, when these variables want to start reversing, especially the mechanical output one. So a good example is what I did today. It's 15 days after the race. My body is at the point where it's able to do this. So I did 16 by 1 minute on, 1 minute off. And that really simple workout just helps your body, one, improve mechanical output, two, stimulate the velocity at VO2 max so you can get a little bit of that. But then three, maybe the element that I've kind of left to the side here is improve how your nervous system actually conducts signals from your brain to allow you to go faster. And so you put it all together, and that 16 by 1 workout, even though it just takes a little bit and isn't that big of a lift, is more important for me than any long run.
All right, and let's just jump back and full circle this baby. And standing on the shoulders of giants and relationships are so valuable. What are you giving to the community as a whole? How are you furthering it? How are you helping it? I think a lot of people hurt it. A lot of people take. There's givers and takers. Are you asking for more favors than you're getting? Are you asking for help with things? That's okay, but do you have a plan to give back? Are you giving back in some way? Are you furthering it? Or are you doing this for the glory yourself, the accolades at work, the help? You just need to think of it as a whole. are you a valuable member of the community, or are you just taking energy out of it or taking?
I mean, one thing I've always tried to do is to make ultra running a little bit more legitimate so that, young runners that want to make a career of ultra running can actually do it. For me to actually, I've actually been a professional runner for over 30 years, but it hasn't been through, it's been through my own like entrepreneurial pursuits versus running itself. But I thought, if the business is in a place where young, promising runners can actually dedicate themselves just to what they love, that'd be nice.
And let's end this with a clip about failure, because I think it's so important to know that what you're trying, an ultra marathon, is so hard. I mean, it's 100 miles. Your parents probably don't even like to drive that far. And it's okay if you fail. But the key is knowing that you can go back and do it. Maybe you don't want to, maybe you don't have to, but knowing that you can. So that's what Nick Fowler does in this clip.
What are the options once you finally do get yourself out of that canyon?
The FKT was off, and I was mad at myself. I was, dang it, why did I announce? I should have waited 2 days. Like, this is so embarrassing. Now I have to tell the world that I failed.
I did like how you told us you had like the picture of the sign that's like, don't bring too little water. People have dehydration issues. And you're like, yep, that was me.
It was definitely me. So I took 2 days off. Got a hitch to Flagstaff, stayed with the Trail Angel at Flagstaff. They fed me some amazing hot soup. Had a warm bed to sleep in, took a shower. And then the next day I was feeling somewhat better. And I was like, man, I'm already out here. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Like, in my head, I was thinking, if I'm leaving Canyon, I have to do something epic. I can't just come out here for nothing. And so like my motivation like skyrocketed after that. I was like, no, I'm not done. So I rested 2 days and then I restarted.
All right. Thanks for listening. It's been a very rough 2 weeks. Still getting all these episodes out. It's been very hard. I'm at my parents' house. They have been banging dishes the whole time, but trying to record these, get these out for you. I really value you guys. I value how this has grown. I value that I get to talk to people, value my own career, which has now been 13 years, and all the haters, especially those in media who have given me no credit for anything I've done, they can fuel me. 2025 will be a good year. Hopefully better than 2024. It's been a tough one. All right. Love you guys. 5-star reviews really help. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/freeoutside. I got faster internet and a better microphone, which when I ever get home after all this family stuff will get put to use. All right. We have a great announcement coming at the end of the episode on Friday, which I'm actually going to put out on Thursday, because I spent a lot of Thanksgivings alone, whether living in a foreign country or on the trails doing like the Great Western Loop and stuff, that if you're out there alone, if Thanksgiving's a hard or sad holiday, I just want to give you something to listen to here in my thoughts. Life's hard. Get through it. Hopefully these clips offer some advice, some help, some enjoyment. I know it's replaying them, but I think it's important to learn from other people, take that forward, and at least be aware. So I just try to pull out what's relevant. That's what I try to do in the interviews. I really appreciate the reviews. They make my day in what has been a lot of hard days lately. All right. With that, my friends, stay elite.